right, they're getting ready. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming out to the SEMA 2021 ICAR and SCRS collision stage. Going to have a good discussion today talking about a glue pull repair. Got some experts in that field up here with us. We'll go around and kind of introduce ourselves. Maybe. So my name is Gerald Gabriel. I'm with ICAR. I'm in an industry relations role, dealing primarily with the tool and equipment, but then I also support our RTS team as well as some of the other initiatives that we have within ICAR. Just kind of go down the line, everybody introduce yourselves, and then we'll carry on from there.
Yes, happy to be here. I'm Chris White with Kiko Body Repair Products. We are the guys that are bringing glue pull repair to the collision industry. So very excited to be here.
Perfect. My name is Gene Fetty, also with Kiko Body Repair Products. I'm a master technician and trainer for the company.
Michael Bradshaw, Vice President of K&M Collision and also current Treasurer of the Society of Collision Repair Specialists.
Thank you all for coming out. Looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So let's start out first of all, before we get into the background of really what glue pull is. Chris, do you mind kind of summing it up? What is glue pull? Why are we talking about it? What's so exciting about glue pull?
Yeah, thanks for that. Here's the thing. With the way cars have evolved to be so much just a piece of electronics on wheels, being invasive in a vehicle is really presents a number of challenges for the collision industry, as you guys know. So the thing about glue pull repair is that it is the least invasive way to repair a dent. You know, with glue pull repair, we're not damaging the front side of the panel or the back side of the panel. We're protecting the E-coat. And again, you know, so it's just the least invasive, best quality, cold straightening technique. One system that works on all substrates, aluminum, steel, high strength steel. So it is gaining much attention in the collision industry. Matter of fact, our company just won the new product of the year in collision and refinish this year with our level 2 collision repair system. So yeah, it's we're getting a lot of people coming to the booth and a lot of interest, and certainly both at the technician level and from the OEMs. So yeah.
Congratulations on that, by the way, to your entire team, because that's a huge accomplishment. Very well deserved.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
So I can kind of jump in and talk about from a shop perspective why it's so exciting for us. You know, when you look at the changes in vehicle complexity, vehicles are becoming lighter. The steels and the materials that they're using are becoming thinner, but they're also becoming much stronger. You've got many manufacturers that have moved their attachment methods for structural components to rivets and glue because they found that heat application, you know, weakens the steels in the vehicle. So the neat thing about glue pulling is that's kind of the next evolution. So while many manufacturers have said we no longer want you to weld on our cars when you replace panels, there's still been a ton of stud welding, you know, to pull panels. And what you're really doing when you're using that method is you're putting heat in the panel each time you're placing studs on there. And we've all seen technicians, you know, they'll put a line of studs on and they'll pull, and some of them will pop off, and they'll go back and add more studs to it. And you know, just for lack of not knowing, they don't understand what the heat application is doing to that panel, you know, each time. It's creating, you know, heat into the panel. It's making it weaker. It's making it more brittle. It's not going to hold up the same in a collision event or just from a durability perspective. So the neat thing about glue is we can make virtually every pull, every repair that we've been able to make the last 20 years with studs, right? You know, or welding studs or plates to the exterior panels. But now we can do that with glue, and there's so much more we can do with glue that we could never do with studs. And so, from my perspective, it's exciting because you're starting to see mass adoption from the industry, right? And anytime the industry kind of changes the direction of where they're going with things, the advances in the technology in that repair space, become pretty cool. And I think that's what you saw with the award that Kiko won with their cart. That is where the industry's going, because it's just so much better for the cart.
Absolutely is. There we go. So we've kind of touched on some of this, but some of the questions that come up in the conversations that we have from iCar's perspective with the industry is, of course, what is Loophole, right? But then where can it be used? What are the advantages? Common mistakes? How does someone get started? So those are kind of some of the topics we're going to talk about, kind of guide through that, and continue to elaborate on. But let's just start with, like we were talking about, and Chris, you talked about it. Michael, you kind of touched on it too. Gene, I'll throw it to you, if you don't mind. Where can Loophole be used? Substrates. What are we looking at there?
So really, part of the beauty of Loophole repair is the system works across the board. So we can pull mild steel, high strength steel, and aluminum all with the same system. And then as far as parts of the car go, right, all of the sheet metal surfaces, and again, as long as it follows OE procedures, even into unibodies, right? Again, per OE, right? If they're allowing you to make a cold pull or a cold repair, cold straightening, we can get in, and we've even seen some students come through training and go back and just make incredible repairs that were never repairable before, right? Just like Michael just spoke about, right? Stuff that there is no other way to repair this than Loophole repair. And with that, we're seeing more panels become repairable instead of replaced, and even seeing some cars that are saved from a total loss, right, because of Loophole repair. So it really it works from a rough out phase all the way up to close to a metal finishing and everything in between.
Right. Just to add to that, when we go into shops where they've actually purchased our system and they purchased training from us as well, many times when we go to show them, we say, look, show us what you have to work on. They'll start showing us little dents and dings, and it's like, guys, that's cute, but give us something to work on, right? Give us a collision repair, right? And because this is a collision repair system, it's not just for dents and dings anymore, right? So that's what I think, what people may not think. These are guys that have already spent money buying our system and buying our training, and they come in and they think we're going to fix dings with it. And yes, we are going to fix dings with it, but we're gonna save quarter panels that are heavily dented, right? All the way up into whatever the OEM allows. That's what we're able to do. I can count times, 5 or 6 times personally in the last year that I've been in shops, and we save a quarter panel that was marked to be cut off, right? Just with glue. Again, doing repairs that weren't possible before our system.
It's incredible when you get into some of those collision type repairs, because I think exactly like you said, you walk into these shops and a lot of repair facilities are thinking this is still just for dings, this is still just for hail type damage or things like that, and it's so much more than that. Gene, you mentioned pulling unibodies, and we've got an example on the screen with the big tabs and pull tower and pulling on a rocker that, as you mentioned, as long as this is allowed for cold straightening with the OE, let's make sure that we can continue that, but let's cold straighten it. Let's get this thing straight and keep the car going.
Right.
They're asking you to put it closer to your mouth. So with that, obviously we're limited to substrates as far as just metals. You mentioned aluminums, high strengths, all of the other metals. Any other areas that you're seeing it used? Anything out of the ordinary where shops are maybe using it?
So one thing that sort of stands out is, I don't know that there's a whole lot of bumper repair, but certainly you can move plastic with that, right? But that comes down to shop's choice, whether it makes sense or not. But somewhere that really comes into play is more of, I call it triage or pre-repair, making it part of the blueprinting process, right? So if we want to talk about maybe a specific model, the Tesla Model S, the part of the quarter panel below the taillight is an inaccessible area, right? Shops traditionally, with traditional methods, can't access and pull there, right? So that leads to a lot of quarter panel replacements. Implementing a process of glue pull repair into your blueprinting process, right? Where you can do an attempt to repair to see whether you're saving that panel or it does need to go to replacement. But it's, not just for repair, and certainly probably the biggest thing we run up against is GPR. Glue pull repair is not PDR. It's being born out of the PDR space. We sort of hold that stigma, but it really is for collision repair. So that's one of the places that really sneaks in, and we see great benefit for shops with that.
Yeah. And I'm sure, Michael, knowing the facility that you've got, you're probably utilizing, I know you're utilizing the Kiko glue pool, but how are you and your team utilizing it with that, kind of in conjunction with the traditional repairs?
Yeah, so honestly, we've virtually moved away from traditional repairs. Glue probably now accounts for 90+% of what we would repair. And there may be some situations where we would use some keys, but that would be after a glue pull. So we've dialed it into, we always start with glue, and then if there's something that for whatever reason we can't access for glue and the manufacturer allows, the keys or studs, we may use those, but it's 90% plus glue pull. And the thing I think you're seeing as an industry, Jaguar Land Rover, for several years now has held fast that there is no welding keys on their vehicles. If you can't access it from the backside or you can't glue pull it, then it's a replaceable panel. And I think what you're seeing is more and more manufacturers are going that way. So we've kind of adopted the stance that we want to glue pull virtually everything because it's really the best repair. And sitting here today, I can say that with confidence. 4 or 5 years ago, I couldn't, and I think that's what people really need to understand is it's hard to wrap your head around the advances in the technology with the different line pullers and the different glues that are out there. And I think, if you're trained properly on it and understand how to prep the panel and understand how to let the glue cure before you make your pull, it's stronger a lot of times than what people were used to with the studs or keyed methods. So,
yeah. One other thing to keep in mind with regard to areas where it can be used is you can actually use it on E-coated panels that haven't even been painted yet. So we've seen that. We've walked into shops where the guys have us working on actual cars that are collision damaged, but then they had maybe some parts that they had received from an OEM that were damaged, and they were waiting for a replacement part. And with particularly in 2021 with the supply chain crisis, it seems like every shop we go in, we're fixing a couple panels that came in damaged. And though the glue doesn't stick quite as well on the E-coat as it does the clear coat, it's we always have plenty of extra force, it seems, to be able to make it work. We got enough wiggle room in the system to be able to make it work even on E-coat, right? So just another thing to keep in mind. One
of the big advantages that we've talked about is the fact that this repair process is so much less invasive, right? It's a lot kinder to the vehicle. Michael, you touched on it from production aspect, but from a customer perspective, there's so many advantages to that, right? Anybody want to?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, traditionally where, you were using the keys or the studs, you were welding something to the exterior of the vehicle to make those pulls. then there's the need for backside access to repair the backside of those areas, which on some of these vehicles, if you're doing that to a quarter panel area or something, it can be pretty invasive. You've got to remove a lot of interior to get to that backside. You're going to have to remove modules and different fuse blocks and things like that. So it becomes a far less invasive repair in that sense. And it's a tool that helps reduce the cycle time. So you can get a customer back in a vehicle much faster. You're saving what's removed from the vehicle. You're saving the need maybe to perform some coating or resets of modules and things of that nature. So that's kind of one of the big benefits we've seen.
So at that point, you're improving cycle time, which of course benefits the customer, like you mentioned, benefits the shop, of course, benefits the bill payers. It's a win-win for everybody. Doesn't want to play. So, again, just kind of carrying on the conversation, talking about advantages of loophole repair. And so we've touched on things that we can straighten. One thing we haven't really touched on is what's behind the dent. We talked about it with access, right? That sometimes you don't have that access. Any concerns there from a repairability perspective?
Yeah. So, in the illustrations we have here are great. So many manufacturers now are using different noise canceling and acoustic foams that are behind panels. Traditionally, even if the panel was repairable, you're having to get that backside access to remove the foam because it's flammable. So now, you still need to be aware of where that area is, where it's located within the vehicle, but the glue pulling doesn't affect that. And in fact, a concern that you need to be aware of with some of the quarter panel repairs, you can make a glue pull and pull an adhesive bond loose from an outer wheelhouse. And I think that's what people need to understand, kind of get their heads wrapped around, is how strong these glues are and what kind of force can be applied. So that's, all those are great considerations.
When it comes to the glues, the adhesives on the vehicle, right? I should specify which glue I'm talking about. When we're talking about the vehicle adhesives, other than separating a panel, are there any concerns you guys have run across as you've been developing these processes, developing these tools, that would create any additional thoughts or concerns for the technician? Or is it pretty much just user-friendly in that regard?
So it is really very user-friendly, right? All technicians have been moving metal their entire careers, right? We're simply giving them another tool to move metal with, right? We're not trying to come in and say, listen, when you get glue pull repair, you can throw the rest of the shop away, right? It's another arrow in your quiver, right? What we preach when we're teaching is really just great fundamental body repair, right? So we always talk about, we work strongest to weakest and then deepest to shallowest, right? So in that proper body repair, if we're talking about getting into something that's structural, right? Using your knowledge as a qualified modern technician, right? You're going to be looking at and identifying your inner structure damage, right? And to repair that quarter panel, we need to address, or you, the technician, need to address that structure first and foremost. And as you are repairing or attempting to repair, you need to make sure that you're doing a good, solid, safe repair. And to speak to Michael's point of understanding just how strong these glues are, in our system, our largest tabs will pull over 1,500 pounds of pulling power, well beyond what you need to move sheet metal, right? So another thing that we teach is to not pull to release, right? Move slow and controlled, right? Be in control while you're moving the metal. Think less like a gorilla and more like a technician, right? Come in and ease into it. And right, just as technicians, we're a little bit aggressive anyways. We want to move metal and we want to get going. You have to respect the power that the glue brings to this and this repair. Like, you can really make some incredible moves.
Yeah, so just thinking through this particular slide, and it says, what is behind the dent? Is there anything holding the damage? That brings up an important point in the fact that, all dents are not the same, even if they look like the same, either the same size and the same depth. where that is on the panel and what is behind that, the front panel, will make a tremendous difference in the glue pole repair result. I mean, there are, dents in the middle of a panel, even someone with, call it a small dent going back to the dings, those in a middle of a panel with no support structure behind that. Even a technician that just maybe has a few days of good glue pole repair experience and training might be able to get to what we call a blockable level, like very close, where you hit it with an 800 and it's gone, right? A hail dent type thing, and you hit it with a 800 grit and it's gone. But that same dent, if it's on a door and that support structure is right behind there, now it might not move the same way at all, and you might really struggle to be able to get that dent out, right? So things like that, what's behind the vehicle, and just it makes me think of being in Michael's shop and how impressive it was in Michael's shop that he had these roll around stations with a huge monitor, and that all of his estimating personnel had and repair personnel had all the drawings pulled up, and they know exactly what they're working on. They can see it on the front side, and they can see the prints, and so they know what if there's and if they're good glue pullers, then they think, well, I can do that, and then wait a minute, I'm going to struggle here because of where this is located and what's behind it. So,
and that really goes back to our earlier point too about being mindful of the OE repair procedures, right? Whether it's identifying if we can repair this metal with cold straightening, but then again looking at the diagrams, looking at the cutaways like we have on the slide here, and really knowing where are our limitations at. All right, let's not put anybody on the spot. Okay, don't name any names, but what are some of the common mistakes you've seen? What's happening out there in the industry?
So you're making it a little too easy with the slide, but really, and when we're talking about it, the most overlooked part of a successful pull is keeping an eye on that temperature, right? So we're talking about a hot melt adhesive, right? So we need to get that to a temperature to melt and to reach its maximum adhesion capability, and then we need to keep an eye on temperature to know that we're down into the right working temperature. So in that, to speak to some specifics, right, that temperature is, we want to work between 70 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit is where we want to make our pulls. That's just about across the board. All of your collision glues are going to perform best in that range, without a doubt. If it's too hot, your glue's just not going to set up. It'll stay sort of fibrous and want to pull away. The flip side, if it gets too cold, the glue actually begins to crystallize and wants to break and fall away. So we teach with infrared guns all day long. We're watching infrared guns and making sure that we are staying in that temperature range. For sure, that is probably the number one overlooked part of a successful repair.
Now, when you're talking temperature range, what about substrate temperatures? Are you incorporating heat gun with that when needed to make sure that the substrate is up to temp?
Yeah, so if you hop online and start researching glue pull repair, again, being that glue pulling was born out of paintless, right? There's dozens and dozens of glues, and as a PDR technician, right, you might need to adapt to your environment. You could be outside doing a repair, you could be inside, you can be in the Northeast or the Southwest, right? It's a whole different world. In shops, we really teach you to control your environment, right? So if you can control your environment, that makes everything easier. And with that, simple heat guns. I'm in the Northeast with my shop, so we get cold. In the wintertime, I might use an infrared light to warm the panel up, to get rid of that 20 degrees that it was outside. And the flip side, right, we get hot. We'll be 100-degree days in the summer, and we're using fans or compressed air to, again, control our temperature and bring it down. But being aware of your temperature and doing whatever you need to get down into that 70 to 85-degree range is what you need to do.
Yeah, and another thing to just remember, I mean, everybody here and everybody watching understands that aluminum transfers heat much, much faster than steel. And of course, we advocate on both aluminum and steel, warming that panel up just to get rid of the humidity, warming it up to about 120. We'll on aluminum, we might even stretch that to say 130, and then we would say that you would want to work more quickly with aluminum because you warm up to 120, and if your shop's a 60, 70 degree shop, literally in 30 seconds you're back under 100, right? So if you wait too long after that heat, then you would absolutely cool back down maybe too quickly. So, being ready to go, having, we've got a process where we're choosing a number of things, right, and having your repair plan in place and being ready to go to work gluing your tab right after you do that heat on aluminum is going to be very important, because being able to get that tab on the panel quickly and allowing that panel to cool as the glue cools and hardens is going to give you the best result.
So I'm gonna change gears, look at it from a shop owner perspective too, because it's a common mistake, not from an application standpoint, but from an administrative standpoint, is understanding that these materials are consumable, right? And as any other consumable that we use, for a part of a repair, understanding that as a shop we can bill for those items. And so I think far too few shops have a system in place to set up and track what the technician is using during a glue pull, and then making sure that gets transferred to their repair plan or blueprint so they can bill for those items.
So to tie into that and tie into the conversation around glue, you're not going down to the hobby store to get glue, right? So
Can't get it at Hobby Lobby?
maybe.
Yeah.
We'll let Gene send some over there. So can you guys talk about the difference of the glue and why it's not just your hobby store glue, and how that ties into what Michael's saying too about consumable material? Shops are going to use this up. It's not something that they're going to continue to use. Of course, the tabs and stuff can.
Kiko gives you glue for free for life when you buy the system, though, right? Is that?
So the glues are specially formulated hot melt glues, right? And some of the properties that they need to hold up to are, first, the glue coming out of the gun is right around 190 degrees Celsius. That's 350 to 375 Fahrenheit. That glue needs to be durable enough to rise up to that heat and not boil, right? So that's part of it is we need to get it hot. That allows us a few things. First, to be able to fill these large tabs up, right? We're coming out with hot glue, and temperature matters, and it takes seconds, multiple seconds, to fill these big tabs up. If we're not working at that high of a temperature, right, the glue on the beginning of the tab is going to be cool before we get there. So the glue, first and foremost, needs to be able to get hot enough and keep its adhesive properties. Then another big advantage to glue pull repair is we're able to hold tension on the panel and begin to address and bring those lows out, and then come in and begin working the crown. So we're going back and we're striking the panel, which sends a lot of vibration into the panel. So that glue now needs to be strong, but still stay rubbery and flexible, so that while we're adding all the shock waves back into the panel, we're not just breaking the glue off. So if it's a brittle glue, right, you're going to not be able to get those successful pulls. And then just strength, right? These glues are formulated to pull strong. Again, when the tab that we're talking about pulling 1,500 pounds of pressure with, right? Part of that magic is the glue is also strong enough to stay in there and flexible enough to come out. And also in that flexibility, as you're moving dents out, cars are not simple flat pieces of metal. They're complex shapes. So we need to be able to come out and stay on the car while we bring it out. And then to speak to the consumables, of course, your glue, right? It's one-time use, right? You're not picking them up and remelting them. Like, you're going through your glue, your alcohol, which is your cleaning solution, and your release solvent, right, as a consumable. Your microfiber towels. So we want good microfiber towels to get clean. once you get that hot glue stuck in the towel's gone. So your towel becomes a consumable. And then your smaller finishing tabs, part of the technology that goes into these tabs to allow us to pull small, precise damage to finish things out to a high level, makes them what we call a semi-consumable. Your smaller tabs are going to break, and that is not a warrantable item, right? It's a consumable. So all of those things need to be billed out for to the bill payer, right? You're consuming those. You're spending the shop dollars to bring those in, and it's a one-time use. They're done and gone. So you need to be billing for that for sure.
Yeah, and just to tag on, and specifically with the glues, it's important to understand there's not one glue for every pull, right? There are a ton of different glues out there. The glues you may use in your shop are going to be different maybe than what I use in my shop, just based on humidity and temperature. I live in the south, it gets hot, it's humid. Somebody in the north, it's a colder climate. So there are a ton of different glues out there, and it's in some ways it can even be trial and error. I mean, you can get a good idea of what should work in your facility, but you may want to try a couple different ones and see what your technician likes best.
Yeah, absolutely. You can. We teach on two glues to simplify the process. But as the technician chases their craft as a craftsman technician, and you move higher and higher towards better finished repairs, you can get into nuances and write a glue that works in Michael's shop in the south in the middle of July, right, is not maybe going to work quite as precisely and well as it will in my shop in February, right in the Northeast. And as you progress as a technician and as a glue pull repair technician, right, you can get into some really, really deep nuances for sure, and glue being one of those.
Yeah, and that's where the training becomes so important. Is if you buy the unit and you roll it into somebody's shop and they don't have any experience with glue pulling, they can kind of figure it out, a little bit. But it's we recently went through the training with Kiko, and the nuances and the just the little tiny things make such a huge difference on what the finished product looks like. And it's really important that as a shop you understand the investment in the training side of things as well as the equipment.
So you mentioned the rubbing alcohol or the alcohol. Touch on that, because I think that's something important for people to understand is how's the glue going to come back off?
Right. So that's one of the things that just, it's amazing to demo and people watch, right? And one of my favorite demos is to do one of our oversized aluminum tabs and really just pull as hard as we can to demonstrate the raw power. And this thing holds on and can almost buckle a door if you wanted to, right? And then we come in with that 99% isopropyl, which is our cleaning product, but also our release product. And you get that on there, and as soon as that alcohol gets in between the bond of the glue to the paint or the glue to the tab, the minute is like instant that it releases. So it's incredibly strong, and then the alcohol as the solvent for it, as the release agent, releases it. It really is almost like magic.
It is.
Yeah,
it's always
like
fun.
That big move that he's talking about that we do at trade shows here. I've watched it a dozen times today. He's got that big tab and holding. Literally, I know from our lab that we're holding 1,000, 1,200 pounds, and people don't know that this door that they're looking at they don't have any idea that they can see there's some tension there. They don't have any idea that it might be like 1,000 pounds, but you hit it without alcohol, and it makes a huge pop. You have to hang on to that lifter because that thing tries to jump, and everybody jumps back. I mean, it's really a fun thing to watch people recognize the strength and the power that the glue system has.
It's not your mother's hot glue, is what you're saying, right?
So a question then in regards to the alcohol and the removal of the glue. We see within our industry a lot of vehicles with ceramic coating. Right? The high-end coatings, the super hard coatings, things like that. How is that impacting the glue pull repair, and how is glue pull repair impacting that? There's got to be a give and take there, I assume.
Good question.
Yeah, so in dealing with ceramic coatings, right, as technology increases with cars and how you're repairing it, right, the aftermarket also increases and brings new challenges for us. And the ceramic coatings are spectacular, right? They're not so spectacular when you're trying to stick something to the paint. So it's good practice, whether we're talking conventional repair or paintless repair, that you should be having that conversation with your customer is, do you have one of these coatings that may have been thousands of dollars to be applied, right? That needs to be addressed. In glue pull repair, if you've got a ceramic coating, you are going to need to remove or break down that coating. I've found that just a good quality rubbing compound on a polisher will cut that coating down to where we can adhere, but it needs to be reapplied, by the installer that is warranting the car. So you need to have that conversation with the vehicle owner, with the bill payer, of we are going to destroy the hydrophobic properties of your ceramic coat in order to be able to repair this. But same as, again, whether it's paintless or collision, you need to remove that before you're getting into refinishing a panel, right? And it also needs to be reapplied after the fact.
So I'm going to throw this to Michael, because Michael touched on this just a minute ago. You said you recently did some training with the Kiko team for your team, your staff. What led you to that? Where'd you guys start? Where'd you go from? And then hand it to Chris.
So our path was a little different than most. So we started down the road of glue pulling from our Jaguar Land Rover training at the iCar Tech Center in Appleton. So that was our first introduction to it. And we also touched on it with our training with Audi. And again, just being at so many industry events and seeing different classes, or going into the booths at the industry events and seeing that's kind of where I got into it. But from a shop perspective, there's a ton of resources on YouTube. Kiko has a ton of great videos. There are other vendors or training entities that just have a ton of good material on it that'll at least give you an idea of what's out there. And then, with most manufacturers selling quality products, they have good training on how to use their material, how to use their tooling. And if I'm telling another shop owner what to do, I think, do your research, go online. YouTube's a great place to start, actually, and figure out what's going to work best for your shop, and then work with that vendor to source the training from that vendor as well.
Which technicians are you utilizing from a shop perspective, right? Shop mindset. Are you utilizing your, dare I say, more entry-level technicians, or are you jumping in with?
So I think with the glue pulling, you can utilize all the above, right? You can utilize your more entry-level technicians to repair the smaller cosmetic dents, and we took that tact in our shop, right? So there were some entry-level technicians, but there were also some heavy structural technicians that went through the training. And so glue pulling's a great place to start for a technician that is progressing, in the industry, that maybe just has started doing some cosmetic repairs. But it's also a great tool to have in the toolbox for, a heavy structural technician that's used to making pulls, because again, the application for glue right now, in my mind, it's virtually limitless, right? And so I wouldn't want to train one person with one skill set in the shop, because there are so many different repairs of varying skill set levels that glue could come into play.
Chris, I know one of my favorite repairs to watch with glue pull is that bedside. The bedside that's pushed in, caved in, and again, go back to the discussion around the large tabs, the 1,500 pounds of pressure that can be put on these. And that's where you're getting those more structural technicians like Michael's talking about. But what do you see from your perspective in this sort of discussion?
Yeah, so with regard to the types of tools, we have really hundreds of SKUs of tools that are exclusively for glue pull repair. And the way we break that down, there's really two major systems that we think a shop should consider. And the first, we just put them in in levels, and so our level 1 system would be the system that would have a ability to address the larger damage and to minimize that larger damage with larger tabs, larger lifting tools, larger surfaces for striking surfaces for knocking down your high spots, and really no small detail tabs, no lighting, but then as you know, so that level 1 system has all the ability to be able to rough out and be able to do an effective pull to paint. But there are times where in certain areas where you just need to be able to get it a little bit flatter to get and if a guy had a level 1 system, he's probably going to need to get his stud welder or his wiggle wire out a little bit to go along with it to get the finer details. So that's what I would say, that the bigger tabs, the bigger lifting tools, that system is going to have to be used in conjunction with a stud welding or a wiggle wire. But then when we move up to our level 2 system, that has you introduce the light where now you can, instead of a body tech feeling his way to what's high and what's low, now you can leave the paint on and you can use the light, the reflection of the light, to be able to really identify where the center of the lows are and the center of the high spots are. And then we have tools both in the tabs and the knockdowns to be able to address those micro highs and those smaller detailed lows. And that's when when you use both the level 2 system that has all the big stuff and this smaller finesse detail stuff coupled with the light, now that's when you can begin to replace stud welding, wiggle wire, all the conventional tools completely. So
I want to, I'm sure you've heard this objection. Technician's been doing body work, been a repair technician for several years. What's the advantage to them? Now all of a sudden you've thrown another tool in their toolbox. Now they're using this in conjunction, like you were just talking about, with the more traditional tools that they've been using. Are you hearing that sort of pushback, and what's the benefit to them? How do you answer that question?
So the pushback I hear is that they think, right? Well, first, people don't like change as a whole, right? So they think that they can do it faster the old way, right? I already know how to do it this way. I can do it this way. So I like to tell a little story about that. I went to Omaha and was doing a training at a shop, a one-day training, just like Michael's shop went through. And we got done with the training, and the one technician said, "Hey man, I got this repair. Can you come take a look at it? I'm not even sure it's a candidate." And I come over and I'm like, "Actually, it's a great candidate. It straightened the wheelhouse, it addressed the structure, and it was a safe repair." So I said, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to hang out, and I'm not going to do the repair for you. I'm going to coach you through it." So on through and through the first day glue pulling, right? And we got done, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, but I said, I have to ask you, how does that compare to your conventional method? And he sat back for a second, and he looked, and he's like, "Well, I was figuring I'd be to this, I'd get it to primer in 3.5, 4 hours." And we looked up at the clock, and we were right at that 3.5 to 4 hour mark. And this is where the light bulb moment went off for him. He goes, "Well, so I guess it's about the same." And he said, "But wait a minute, I don't have to tear the interior out of this car because I've not damaged anything on the inside, right? So even if, day one or week one, you're only getting to the point where your actual repair on the outside is getting to be about the same amount of time, you're being so much less invasive. There's so much less work required to get to the backside. Those modules you don't have to disturb, right? So, we get that pushback that they think the old way is better. Well, I would just challenge the technicians to just stop and think and give it a go, right? And learn. Take the iCar class on Loophole, right? And learn how to do it and begin to realize that there are better, faster, safer ways to repair vehicles.
Now, so here, this is going to have less to do with actual glue pull repair and more to do with culture in your shop. And here's what I would say is that events like this, organizations like ICAR, organizations like SCRS, I love being a part of those organizations and being involved in events like this, because we're talking about things that are changing the industry for the better. We're talking about things that are the right thing for the car. And guess what? Like, that excites me. I get passionate about that. I love to be around other people that are passionate about that. So in your shops, I mean, Gene's right. People don't want to change, but it's our job as the leaders of our companies to inspire them to change. When the industry needs to change, when our business needs to change, and this is whatever tool, right? Whatever process, then we've got to inspire them to do so. And if we don't inspire them to do so, then our business will not sustain. So 100%, like, we do have that struggle. But when we come in, we tell it like it is. And we tell them, look, this is your responsibility to change culture. We're going to bring energy, we're going to bring passion, we're going to bring education and innovation, but you got to make it happen, right? So, and that's what we love being in shops like Michael's, because that's what they're doing. So
thank you. Another neat thing, just to tag on, really big advantage of Loophole is it's going to reduce the size of the repair area. And so, when I say that, what I'm talking about, a conventional repair, the technician was removing so much of the paint finish at the onset, right? They remove this big area just so they've got access to put their studs. And as your technician grows within a glue pulling system and becomes more comfortable and really improves his skill at it, you're going to continually reduce the overall size of the repair area, which is going to reduce the blending that may be necessary into adjacent panels or things like that. So the immediate benefit, you're going to reduce the amount of filler in these panels, and the longer you use it, the more you get comfortable with it. Just learning the little intricacies, you're going to further reduce that. And we've seen in our shop where body filler is become virtually non-existent. We may use some metal glaze, but we're working the majority of that out with the glue, and then you block sand your area and put a little metal glaze in it and some primer and call it a day and move on.
Advantages, again, back to what we talked about earlier, the advantages to everyone involved, right?
It's cool to hear from students, from adopters of a glue pull repair, right? Like, and Chris gets fired up about change and inspiration. Like, literally, we're talking to technicians that have adopted this, and they're like, man, you're making my life better, right? I'm sanding less, I'm going home cleaner, right? Like, that's real deal. Body work is hard work, right? And it's so exciting and empowering to see that the process and the system that is glue pull repair is changing technicians' lives and making their job a little easier, making their life a little bit easier. And that is the real deal. Like, and if that doesn't inspire you to change, man, like, I don't know what to tell you.
Absolutely. Any last closing thoughts from any of you as far as just glue pull in general?
Just that it's again, the benefits really in my mind are limitless. Like, the technology has come so far in just a few years, but isn't it crazy to think where we'll be within another 3 or 4 or 5 years, with just the advancement. So it's something that's really exciting, and just the ability to reduce the dust, have a cleaner environment for your technicians, for your customers, for everybody. It's a really neat deal.
So what I would say is that we are still in the infancy of glue pull repair in its adoption in the industry. And so, Michael, of course, has it, and there's we sell hundreds of systems a year now, right? But one thing that Barry Dorn, our friend Barry Dorn, what he said to me about 6 months ago was, Chris, this is like having the future now, like living in the future now. That's what I feel like I have since you brought this system to us. gave us the education. We are living in the future now, and that's giving us a tremendous advantage. So, to tie that in, I guess that's a very positive way to look at it. The negative way is that future turns into present, which turns into past, right? So if you don't move forward, then pretty soon you're not living in the future anymore, or even the present. You're living in the past, right? And so as industry changes, as our culture changes, or whatever the industry throws at us as with Loophole repair, we're going to keep changing. We have to keep changing, and so certainly that's what we have to remember, is that Loophole repair, will take change, but it's a change that's the right thing for the car, the right thing for the technician, the right thing for the shop. So,
Absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you. I want to throw it out to our audience. Is there anybody that's got any questions regarding the glue pool process or the tools, the equipment? Okay. Gentlemen, again, thank you. It's good discussion, good information.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks
We
for having
appreciate
us.
you.
thank you very much.